In Chapter 5, we're ready for the culminating experience. To find out more about it, check out the PDF Culminating Experience Teacher Guide in Lesson 4.19. It's an online-only exclusive. It's not in the printed teacher guide. We'll show you some of the key pieces now. It's got thought starters if students are struggling with ideas to enhance soil or biodiversity, example student work, in this case it's an example student poster, and our detailed rubric with all the different categories for each of the 3 NGSS dimensions. The culminating experience gives students a chance to demonstrate what they've learned about this chain of cause and effect that we illustrated throughout the unit. That when you have rich soil, that promotes biodiversity, which generates a healthier ecosystem, which provides more ecosystem services. Their job is to focus in on one ecosystem and one ecosystem service that they're interested in improving as their criteria. And then they have to come up with a solution that will help accomplish that, where they make suggestions to either improve the soil quality or directly improve biodiversity. Now, you as the teacher get to define the study sites to some degree, although it's great if you can include your students in this decision-making process. The key is to come up with locations that are local and relevant. They could be outside one of your classrooms, in the schoolyard, in the neighborhood, or something much larger, like if there's been a wildfire nearby, or an opportunity for a marsh restoration in a coastal area. Or if there's a big disaster in the news in an area where many of your students have family or heritage, like the big Pakistan floods a few years back, take the recovery of that ecosystem on as a project. If the project is small and local, of course, your students could actually implement their proposal as a bonus, but that's not a requirement. Let's see how this project unfolds day by day. In Lesson 19, students first review the soil body of knowledge created in the previous class period, and you should emphasize the cause and effect and stability and change relationships going on here, and how this body of knowledge will be used for the culminating activity in this unit. Students get the Restore a Soil Ecosystem instructions that defines the project criteria. At this point, you can either choose an ecosystem with your students or assign one to them, and their first task is to begin researching what's a soil ecosystem problem in this area. In Lesson 20, really focus in on defining the goal of our project. What are the criteria that we're trying to achieve and the constraints on our design? The Restore a Soil Ecosystem handout describes the criteria that we're using to measure our success, improving one ecosystem service. And we want your students to focus on one because they're so complex and rich. They'll also spend some time thinking about what the constraints are, what the limitations are, what they can and cannot do. Now, this is all part of defining a problem in the engineering design process. In the next lesson, we try and answer the question, what could we change or do to this ecosystem to help improve it? We start off by sharing the rubric for the final project so that students can see what criteria they're going to be assessed upon. And then they start developing design solutions. At this stage, they're just sketching out some different ideas and drawing some simple schematic diagrams that they put on a poster. Students then share their ideas by putting up their posters around for a gallery walk and browsing other ideas so they can refine their own solutions based upon the input and ideas from other students. In the next lesson, it's time to finalize our solution and start thinking about how we're going to communicate it. At this point, you can choose to show the example work by previous students, or just let students get right to work so they can design their own posters. In the next lesson, students are going to be presenting their design solutions, but before they do, we'll introduce a grid that students will take notes on with information about their peers' design solutions. Then it's time for students to make their presentations, and the teacher can evaluate using the Soil Ecosystem rubric. In the next lesson, students continue presenting so that all the teams have a chance to share their ideas, and we hold a whole class discussion to address how do our solutions compare. Students spend the end of the lesson working on a soil haiku, a poem about soil and its importance to Earth that they're going to share in a future class period. In the next lesson, students reflect on the soil body of knowledge that they've piled up so far. A worksheet scaffolds some student discussion, and then students consider 2 important prompts. How does knowledge lead to action? And what role does science play in making decisions? We explore these questions in small groups and as a whole class. Before the end of the day, guide students on how to review their learning for the unit assessment that they'll take next time. In the last lesson, students take the soil unit assessment, and then we end by sharing our culminating soil haiku poems that students started a few days ago, and we enjoy the successful completion of a unit. Next up is Unit 5, Water, Life, and Danger.